Welcome to the Mill Creek View, Tennessee podcast with your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of the Mill Creek View newspaper.
Welcome to my favorite time of the month, the Let's Go Brandon time of the month with our very special guest, not that Brandon, our Brandon Lewis of TennesseeConservativeNews.com, covers the stories that mainstream media ignores, like wasted tax dollars on corporate welfare, drag in the honky-tonks, choice lanes, dove hunting season, tornado watch, Phil Williams Channel 5 Nashville fan club, porno books and hustler magazines in the school library for 5-year-olds, gross, hard-hitting stuff like that, plus the Rhino Report. BL, how are you today?
I am great, and I want to thank Steve for my kerfuffle. I like Steve makes his living doing something else, but cares about conservatism. I make my living doing something else. I care about conservatism, and so occasionally the careers and the activism get all out of alignment. So I'm glad we were still able to make this happen since I dropped the ball. Glad to be here.
Yes, well, and a year ago at this time, you would have been standing above floorboards. So it looks like you have a different background there in a house that now looks almost complete.
Yes.
All right. Well, you know, it was supposed to be another slow news cycle, but I'm not sure that phrase even exists anymore in the news business since the Clinton Monica Lewinsky blue dress days. And I know you don't follow world events or much of DC because you love your Tennessee and, like me, don't want to Californicate it or see it turn into Stanford University East. But sometimes they drag us in. Can't help it. Can't look away. Let's just jump into this. Y'all endorsed Andy Ogles for U.S. Congress in the newly created District 5. How do you think he, Green, Fleischman from your neck of the woods, Diane Harshberger, Tim Burchett, Des Jarlins, Rose Kustoff, and everyone else, American hero, everyone's favorite, Steve Cohen, the congressional leaders from Tennessee and D.C., how are they doing?
Well, it's kind of hard to know how people in Congress are doing, which is one of the reasons I don't keep up with it that much, because we've got a handful of people in a sea of liberals and rhinos up there, so my ability to make a difference isn't the best. But I was heartened to see the ouster of McCarthy. I do hope that, and maybe because I've been recording these videos at the House, maybe do we have a speaker? You would be able to tell me. No, we still don't have one.
You are the Speaker of the House right now.
Okay, so I got to meet Jim Jordan with Congressman Desjardins at some point. I assume he voted for him. I've not followed the story very closely. And he seemed like an all right guy, but all of them do. But he has been outspoken, conservative, and against the grain on most matters outside looking in. I don't follow it as closely as I do Tennessee politics. Often the image of someone's record and their record have nothing to do with one another. You can make a big stink and a ruckus to grab cameras, but that's not the same as governing. That's not the same as legislating. So I'm hoping that folks like Ogles and Desjardins, the ones, and Harshberger, the ones that tend to be more conservative overall, will probably get behind Jim Jordan. I think it is a testament to what a small group of conservative holdouts can do when the situation is right to bring governance back in order.
So 22 Republicans voted no. All the Tennessee ones, except for Steve Cohen, of course, voted yes. So he is not going to be Speaker today, and it's not because of the Tennessee delegation. It's the other ones. It's the rhinos from New York and even Bacon, who has shown his bacon. But Congressman Andy Ogles is from Tennessee. You did endorse him. He joined Congressman Tom Tiffany from Wisconsin, of all places, in filing a bill that would prevent the Biden administration from allowing Palestinians to enter the U.S. seeking refuge in light of the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas as pro-Israel and pro-Palestine protesters clash in Nashville. That's from your website, of all places, Nashville, pro-Palestinian protesters. What do you make of that story?
Well, I think it the larger piece, which I often don't get into large theoretical arguments because I think they're sort of pointless, but the larger situation that we have both in Tennessee and nationally with the Palestine-Israel conflict has specifically to do with this whole critical theory strategy that liberals and leftists have grabbed onto to attack traditional Western values from day one. And there is no bigger target than Israel because they represent that. Why people would get behind the values of a country that, according to their own leaders, hates the living guts of Americans, more or less, and wants to take away the sovereignty of another nation. And I think if anyone in Tennessee had an opportunity to defend themselves, if someone was coming into their home, attacking their family, setting fire to their house, the thought that you should just let that happen without any type of retaliation or self-defense is ludicrous. Yet we have the left in abundance pushing this. And I believe it all falls underneath that critical umbrella of destroying what Western civilization, what freedom, what federalism gives us. And so I am not surprised in any way, shape, or form the depravity of the left. God has told us what's going to happen with all of this. It is written down in the book. And so as these things continue to happen, I don't think conservative Christians should be surprised, but I do think that we are called to fight against it practically, not just as keyboard warriors, and to speak out against it as well.
My friend, you just described the legal system in the state of Washington. So the fact that it's happening here in Nashville is upsetting, but yes, that is correct. Okay, lots of news, not a lot of time, so let's jump into some more headlines right off of your beloved website, www.tennesseeconservativenews.com, all spelled out because you're a mean Republican who thinks people need to know how to spell. Item number 1. Navigating today's political climate as a young Christian conservative female, Adelia Kirchner on the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast. I've heard of that. What were you thinking hiring a Gen Z female?
I'm thinking I got very lucky. Adelia is remarkably gifted in her ability to write, her ability to express conservative ideals from a younger perspective, and to speak directly to camera about those issues. She is going to go far one day, hopefully in my old age and dotage, if the rest of my family should go on to the great reward. Adelia will still be young and spry. Maybe she'll help an old man out. But she is just fantastic. Her writing is spot on, in depth. It goes to show you the value of a homeschool education and what all she was able to learn through loving parents that instructed her in the way of faith and in the great republic that we have here. So I'm just tickled, and we are lucky, beyond lucky, to have her on the staff.
And did she call you out of the phone book, or did you go recruit her somehow?
We are at the Tennessee Conservative. I often say we are not a corporate news publication that is bought and paid for by people that hate our ideology, which is every other news outlet in the state of Tennessee just about, but rather we are kind of a confederacy of conservatives rather, that get together not out of a love of money, but out of a love of the principles of conservatism. So somehow, some way, she got to us, and we are very lucky. That was a fortuitous event.
God moves. Okay. Okay. I know this is going to be hard for you. You have a stern reputation as a boss, but tell us something nice about Jason Vaughn.
Jason Vaughn is one of the hardest working, overworked, underpaid people in journalism in Tennessee. He has got a multitude of skills and gifts. He is empathetic when he needs to be, but he doesn't take any BS unless he has to. And if it weren't for him, he is the man behind the curtain. And he likes to be behind the curtain, and work behind the scenes. But if there were no Jason Vaughn, I doubt seriously there would be a Tennessee conservative. So subscribers everywhere should rejoice. Send him nice messages, whatever you can do, because we're lucky to have him as well.
Yeah. Well, as hardworking as he is and as underpaid, it's not as hardworking or as unpaid as you and I. So that's another story. But all right. Real headlines from ttc.com. Nullification bill may have an opportunity to be heard again in next year's general session. A bill sponsored by Senator Janice Bowling, Republican, Tullahoma District 16 in 2023 has an opportunity for a rehearing in the next general session in January 2024. Restoring State Sovereignty Through Nullification Act, probably the favorite thing I've heard in the legislature since I myself got to Tennessee a year and 3 months ago. What do you think of all that?
So it baffles me that rhinos in the Tennessee General Assembly know so little about the founding of our country that they think any and all recommendations, any and all laws, any and all power rests exclusively with the federal government and alphabet agencies. Time and time again, whether it is the issue of indoctrination in our schools, if it's rampant illegal immigration, if it's anything, if it's federal funding and dollars, the rhinos up there in committee act as if there is no state sovereignty, that state sovereignty does not supersede federal sovereignty, which it does in the Constitution. We're going to increasingly have our rights encroached upon by the federal government. We have seen it year after year. They never, ever let up. They never will. So we have to have a well-defined process in the state of Tennessee whereby if Joe Biden says you have to leave your firstborn child on the doorstep because the CDC says that it's good for global warming, that you don't have to do that. And as a state, you can put a line in the sand and say, that's great if it's your edict, but we're not going to provide you with any state resources to report it, to enforce it, to do anything else. And in fact, we're going to fight it. And so the fact that Janice Bowling had to fight her own party to get that nullification bill reheard, which was killed in committee previously, it is just amazing. But guess what? Janice Bowling also had to fight and was defeated by rhinos when she initially sponsored the bill that would have stopped the transgender mutilation, which was killed by rhinos. And how many kids have had their lives permanently damaged because the rhinos in committee would not follow the Republican conservative leadership of Janice Bowling? And I'll close with this final remark. If the men in the Tennessee General Assembly were half the man that Janice Bowling is, we would have a lot more conservative government. She needs to go up there and teach the boys how to be men.
The same folks that think Hamas is that Middle Eastern dip made out of chickpeas, right? Tennessee Department of Education attempt to do away with parents' rights. What the F?
Well, explain this one again. Give me a better headline.
That's your headline, and it was about a Department of Education in Tennessee, not the federal government. They have a bill to do away with parents' rights, and I'm just going to click right over here to TennesseeConservativeNews.com, and I'm going
to... You may have to cut that one out, Steve. I'm sorry.
Okay, but I bet you know all
about
it.
Out. You may have to trim the video or whatever, because I didn't read that.
Okay.
Tara's been here for a week at the house. We've been working on Painters Academy stuff, so I'm just kind of like out of it. Sorry.
Okay, let's move on. It's, it's totally okay for you to say, I don't know. It's, I love that line. I don't know, but I'll find out. A man who was discovered to be a twice deported Honduran national has been charged with 2 separate murders in Nashville in this past week. A second headline: the killer of a Chattanooga father and businessman has 66 prior arrests on his record, with 2 involving confrontations with a weapon. A former TBI employee says that the justice system in Tennessee is like a, quote, criminal mill, end quote. What's going on with law and order in our beloved Tennessee?
Well, there are 2 things. Number one is rhinos like Bill Lee, Cameron Sexton, and Randy McNally, despite having been harangued, pleaded with from their constituents back in their district to do anything about illegal immigration at the state level, the Chamber of Commerce, all their corporate buddies, continue to push back against any reforms that will reduce this stuff. The murders of people by illegal aliens, the violent crimes, things of that nature that happen in Tennessee fall squarely on the shoulders of Republican leadership in the General Assembly. It's one thing if you did everything you could to turn off the magnets, the mass transportation, the abuse of the education, the benefits, the health care, and the criminal justice system. If they were doing everything they could to prevent it, and yet someone comes in and breaks the law, that's one thing. But when you advocate for more illegal aliens, when you put illegal alien centers in the backyard of Tennesseans like Bill Lee did in Chattanooga where kids are molested and lost, when you try to pass bills to give them professional licenses as an additional magnet, then you share in the blame, okay? It's one thing if you fight against it and something happens. It's quite another when you advocate for it, even like the bills that were brought recently by William Lambert to try to make illegal aliens police officers in the state of Tennessee, or the one that was brought by Dale Card to weaken the illegal immigration standards for employees over 50 people. And this is what we have in the Republican Party consistently. And then folks wonder. And the other part I'll pivot to is, our mayor in Tennessee, not in Tennessee, but in Chattanooga, and the one that preceded him, Andy Burke, are soft on crime. They don't police panhandling, public intoxication, littering, loitering, nothing like that. And when you signal to criminals that you will be accepting of criminal behavior, even if it reduces the quality of life and the safety of the taxpayers and the citizens, you attract more of them. And so we are basically just living underneath the poor results of shoddy government. And I believe that Tennesseans deserve better, but more importantly, as conservatives, we need to demand better, both at the ballot box, through our donations, and our activism.
Amen. Yes, you're absolutely right. And I wasn't being rude. I was looking at a text I sent this morning about 4 a.m. West Coast time to my journalist, Jonathan Cho, who covers the homeless crisis. Knox County and Knoxville sees the largest homeless population ever. So everything you just said is absolutely right. And it's hitting the street and it's a human catastrophe. And even the Republican of all Republican states isn't doing what we would hope would for humanity. And I'd love to dwell on it a little longer, but got to move on. And y'all thought I was kidding in the intro, but listen to this headline. Wilson County School Board once again votes to keep pornographic materials in school libraries. Now, the key is once again. Tell us what's going on in Wilson County and why they want their little kids to see dirty pictures.
So to me, it all goes back to the same situation. It's like all this stuff we have. Libraries are nothing more than the government putting books on shelves. Government education is just the government in its best attempt to try to do something that is highly complicated, that requires lots of customization and customer service, which is education to kids, right? When you look at the private school market, you can see how many different flavors there are of education, the different goals, the different objectives. But in both public libraries and in government education, it's one size fits all. And if you don't like it, go somewhere else. And oh, by the way, we have a monopoly and we take your taxpayer dollars to do it. And so what you have over time is the ideologues who have very little in the way of talent that would translate into the free market, embed themselves into these little boards, embed themselves into school boards, embed themselves in these government job factories we call education. And as a result, we end up with that set of values being forced upon not just adults in the marketplace of ideas, but rather forced upon our kids who do not have discernment, do not have judgment, do not have the ability to recognize good from bad. And the fact that people in libraries want to put this filth in front of kids and to think that it will not have any long-term consequences is something that culturally we shouldn't accept. But I think it's something we've come to expect from government in general.
Yeah, I've talked to a couple of lawmakers. The American Library Association is now run by a new president who is a self-proclaimed Marxist lesbian who absolutely wants those books and more and more and more in the schools. And so we're fighting really a big fight here. And I haven't been able to follow the money yet to see why we even bother. But I think we are a part of the American Library Association. All right, last up. This one I'm actually excited about. Big fan of Daisy Duke and her fashion sense. Maybe not anymore at age 69. We'll see in a second, but certainly as a teenager in the 80s. Dukes of Hazzard stars to reunite at Gallatin Comic-Con November 11 through 12, beginning at 10 a.m. Central Time at the Gallatin Civic Center. Tom Wopat, Luke Duke, will reunite with his former hit TV series co-star John Schneider, Bo Duke, and Catherine Bach. Yay, Daisy Duke. You going?
Yeehaw! I don't know if I can make it to that. But I had a General Lee birthday cake, complete with the Confederate flag on the top. I think maybe my first or second birthday. I had a plastic die-cast General Lee. I had Daisy's Jeep. I used to play with it out in the dirt, which I'm sure they will. The people at the Tennessee Holler and every other left-wing organization that wants you to grovel and scrape every time you had anything to do with Southern culture or just popular culture in general.
He listens to the show, so you're going to hear about this.
That's fine. It doesn't make any difference to me. The moment you understand that the left and liberal media have absolutely no control over you if you don't give a shit what they say, is when you really get to go back to what our founders wanted, and that is to have a unfettered free speech, which, as we know, free speech is attacked by both the left and the right consistently. More on the left than the right, but I'm all for it. And if I can get up there somehow, or if I'm in that neck of the woods, I would be happy to go by. That was a fun show, and I appreciate how they showcase so many good country music stars over the years on there. Waylon Jennings, Johnny Paycheck, who else used to be on there? Oh, the guy that's the cousin of Jerry Lee Lewis, Mel Tillis. I'll think about his name.
The Devil Went Down to Georgia.
Yeah, there's all kinds of good. It was a fantastic show. It was, and that's back, it was on cable. It was not on cable TV. It was on network TV. I mean, there were 3 shows on, and one of them was that one, and it probably had the best rating.
You and I had the same thing. I had the same birthday cake. Did you know she was in Thunderbolt and Lightfoot with Clint Eastwood and Beau Bridges, the dude? And Michael Cimino directed that, who also did Deer Hunter and Heaven's Gate, one of the biggest flops of all time. So there's that. And you are stuck up there on Signal Mountain in Chattanooga, so I'm sure you like 70s movies, right?
That's right.
All right. 15 minutes a month is never enough with you. The fountain of important information, all things Tennessee. Well, so if people want to know more about you, where can they go to subscribe to your newsletter, or what podcast of yours should they subscribe to besides Mill Creek View Tennessee on Spotify and iTunes?
Simply go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com, hit that subscribe button. If you feel led by the Lord to give, we would take your money. God knows we need it. And of course, search for Tennessee Conservative, especially on X and or Twitter and wherever you get your podcast, along with my good friend, Steve Abramowitz, who does a great job here. We have hardly anyone. There's no one presently in the state of Tennessee, to my knowledge, that is doing more interviews with more newsmakers than Steve is. So please do support his work.
Thank you. And you can, for $100 a month, you can subscribe to the Phil Williams Retirement Fund on your website, right?
He is terrible. Terrible. What a liberal Democrat masquerading as an independent journalist. The fact that News Channel 5 allows that, and the fact that subscribers don't rebel and not watch that crap is beyond me.
Well, Brandon, you know as well as I do, not all Dems are commies, but all commies are Democrats.
No, this is true.
All right. We'll see you in a month.
Take care, bud.
Welcome back to the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast. We are focusing on the volunteer state and our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community. This time, special guest Julius Maddox and John Jubilee. But first, for more information about the stable of Mill Creek View podcasts, visit us anywhere you get your podcasts and socials at Mill Creek View, Tennessee, Washington, and Florida. While you're there, please subscribe. It's totally free to you. And welcome to our People in News episode, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today we are talking with Julius Maddox. Born and raised in Owensboro, Kentucky, he has been a professional powerlifter for 2 years. Growing up in Kentucky, he never knew powerlifting would be the path chosen for him, and his journey has not come easy. Being a standout high school athlete, he was projected to be a Division I football player, but several wrong choices changed those plans. From dealing with drug addiction, depression, and jail time, he was left at rock bottom. After being given a second chance and entering a recovery program, he chose to make a change. He chose to be irregular, to choose to live irregular. He is the American record holder for raw bench press, currently ranked number 1 in the world for raw bench press, and one of only 5 men in history to bench press over 700 pounds raw. There have been more men who walked on the moon than to have done what he has done. Now he is on a mission to help you be irregular and to show the world how to live irregular. Whether you want to improve your bench press, bring new life and energy to your gym, or inspire, motivate, and elevate your team, students, and or employees, don't do what others do. Be different. Be irregular. The life you live is valuable. Leave your mark. Be irregular. Live irregular, he says. Hello, Julius. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great. John, how are you?
Spectacular. Honored to be here with the one and only Julius Maddox and Stephen Bromowitz.
That's true. My name's a little harder to pronounce. Julius, I am really excited to have you here to tell us your story. We're going to have to edit this because my notes are out of order. Okay. You're a big guy.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in here. Not anyone can do what you do that I've ever met. You say in your bio, during this time, I found 2 things that would change my life forever: my relationship with Christ and a dirty basement floor with some old weights. Using my faith for strength and guidance, I began powerlifting sooner than most. I entered the professional world of powerlifting and found a way to leave my mark. Tell us about your journey to this point.
So let's kind of fast forward back to, I guess I would say a little bit about my childhood. Raised in a somewhat of a dysfunctional family, which we didn't know was dysfunctional. We just lived life and, just went about our day. And, being a younger kid, by the age of 8, I was 179 pounds. They wouldn't let me even play Pop Warner football because I was too big. They was afraid that I was going to hurt the other kids. So I started playing basketball. Basketball was kind of my first love until I found, running the streets and doing the wrong things kind of filled that desire that I had doing the wrong things. And, not soon after, I started to get in trouble. I played both sides of the fence, Nobody wakes up and says, hey, I want to be a career drug addict. But our actions and the steps that we take, that's who and what defines us. And, when your friends are doing something, and I tell this to my students all the time, you are who you hang with. You are a makeup of your 5 closest friends. So a lot of times what your friends are doing, you're going to be doing. And I found myself in a place where my friends were stealing, my friends were robbing people, my friends were using drugs. And because we had built such I finally felt completed because I had people around me. I didn't feel alone anymore. And that kind of contributed to the peer pressure. And I started to do those things that I once said I would never do. In high school, I had this mental tally board that said, I wouldn't have sex before marriage. I would never do anything to put myself in a position to go to jail or prison. I'm going to graduate high school. These things that I said I would never do, apart from graduating high school, by the time I became a senior, I scratched off everything off that mental tally board. And once you start compromising, meaning putting yourself in a position to fail, it just becomes habitual, just like anything else. I've never seen myself flourishing. I've never seen myself becoming great or attaining greatness. And that kind of set the tone for the next 10 years of my life once I graduated high school.
That's amazing. Powerlifting is certainly what I'd call a solo sport, just you against the weights. But it's like tennis or golf in that it's mental. You against yourself in your mind. Who encouraged you or mentored you to help you get to achieve your goal?
There's a few people that first come to mind. One was my counselor. So we talked about the basement and where I first found my love for weightlifting. I got into trouble, just like many other times, but this time that I had got in trouble, there was no bonding out of jail. There was no getting out. I was there to stay. And I had an option at one point to either go to prison and do my prison time, or I could do long-term rehabilitation program, do a long-term rehabilitation program. And of course, because I wanted to get out, see my family, I had been locked up for a significant amount of time, I would end up going to this long-term Christ-centered recovery program. And that's where I kind of found my love for weights, just because I battled depression. When you're on drugs and alcohol, when you use these substances for so long and you're addicted to these substances, when you get off of them, you stay at a state of low spirits. So I found that lifting weights just helped combat those things. Well, one day we were down there. I've been lifting for about 4 months, and I'm going to answer your question. I'm getting to there. But I had been lifting for about 4 months, and one of the guys just made a remark. He said, "I bet you can lift every single weight down here." And keep in mind, I haven't lifted anything over 315 pounds at this time ever in my life. And the guy was just like, "Yeah, I bet you can lift every single plate down here." And I was like, you know what? Let's try it. So we proceeded. They threw on every single plate that was in the basement. And in this basement, in this Christ in the Recovery program, was a 100-year-old home that had been reconditioned to have community living. But the basement wasn't remodeled. So you're talking dirt floor, old steel weights, algae growing up the walls, and just not an ideal place where you think a weightlifter would be. But we proceeded. They threw all the weights on the bar, and I ended up repping the weight out 3 different times. And we added the weight up, which is not a good idea after the fact. And it ended up being 505 pounds. And I still didn't understand or knew the level of strength that was until one of the guys went back and told one of the counselors, and he called me into the office, and he was like, "I don't think you understand like your level of strength, and you've only been training for 4 months." And I still didn't comprehend. And his name is Josh Patterson. He was the one that was like, "Look, you should start competing. We can get you into a regular gym where you can actually have access to train with different types of machines and weights." And he ended up pushing me to start training. He actually found my first weightlifting coach, which is still my current coach today. But yeah, Josh Patterson and my coach Josh Bryant played a huge significant role in, the start of my weightlifting journey.
2 J's and now 2 more J's.
Yeah, I know, right?
Jubilee sitting here right next to you. Something's going on with the J, man.
Lucky letter.
How did you guys meet, John?
So this was, great. We actually had a mutual friend. He invited both of us. Julius is from Kentucky. I live in Southern California, and we met in Florida. And so we were invited down there, and we happened to be there at the same time. And while everyone else was in this board meeting, Julius and I just struck up a conversation out there, and we just had a immediate connection. If you meet Julius Maddox in person, he's just effervescent, authentic, genuine, loving guy. And, he's this massive man. He's a massive man, but, don't judge the book by the cover, because he's got a heart as big as he is. He just has a giant heart. And so I just immediately, loved him, and just loved his passion that he had for kids and wanting to change the world, wanting to help people, and, wanting to be an inspiration. And at that time he was getting ready to, to go do this crazy max lift at Wrigley Field in Chicago. And I said, "Man, I'm coming, I'm going to come, I'll come to your lift, and, I'll support you." And so we just kind of struck up a friendship, and then we always just kind of stayed connected, by phone, after the fact. And then later on, I'll share with you something that just happened recently, but that's how we originally connected.
Okay. Well, I do know that you said when you were in the dirt room, you had 505 added up. John, you're about to do 555 tomorrow, so we'll have to update everybody on the show how that goes. But you're here together in the same town, Franklin, Tennessee, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, for your 555 lift, which is 50 pounds more than Julius started with.
Well, amazingly, and I wouldn't be here without Julius, by the way. So it was really because, when this whole thing came about, I just was at the gym working out, and these guys were like, dude, that's like world record stuff, what you're doing there. And I came home and kind of jokingly told my wife, like, baby, these guys said I'm like a world record guy. And she said, well, how much are you lifting? And I said, well, I lifted 515. I'm going to do 525. And so anyway, I left the house and to come back like 6 hours later, and my wife's been all over the internet and she's researching. Now, this is all stuff Julius would have known, by the way, but for my weight, I'm about 180 pounds. But, right around in that, give or take 20 pounds in that, or I should say 180 to 200. The world record for a bench press was 540. And so my wife asked me, honey, you think you could do 540? And I said, well, I'd have to train for it. I said, but I think I could do 540. And she said, well, the guy that did it, he was all on anabolic steroids. He wore one of those spring-loaded, 500-pound spring-loaded shirts. And I said, well, I wouldn't do that. I said, but I would do a hammer strength decline, And I said, I could beat it on that, safely and naturally, not wearing a shirt, which Julius doesn't wear a shirt, by the way. Most of those guys that lift weight like Julius, they're all wearing those 500-pound spring-loaded shirts. So I gave Julius a call. And I said, Julius, you think I could get 555? And when Julius and I had bet, I was about 202 pounds back then. And we did have a few minutes at the gym, and of course, if Julius goes to a gym, though, everybody kind of mobs him, he can't go anywhere in a gym. He's like Elvis in the building. And so anyway, Julius said, John, I think I could give you some tips. I think you could do it. And so then I told my wife, honey, I'm a numbers guy. I'm going to do 555, and so Julius did. He really helped me. He gave me some totally different things I'd never done before, to do with my workout. And then he graciously, agreed to come down and help me out, for the day of the lift. So he's been totally instrumental. I wouldn't be here without Julius and without his coaching.
Well, tomorrow will be very exciting. Is that the way you remember it? And
oh, absolutely.
You are a coach also, so do you have other?
Yeah, so this is kind of a little different than what I'm used to coaching, but anything like this comes to mind is, he didn't have to show up to my lift at Wrigley Field. He came all the way across the country for one day to watch me lift, and that means the world that you got support from people that you've only met one time. So at the end of the day, when he called me, I'm like, I got you. I'll take care of it. So. That's kind of the gist. But yes, he's going to get the weight tomorrow.
For sure. Okay, let's go back in time a little bit. Age 25.
Okay.
The Owensboro Police Department Street Crime Unit arrested you on drug trafficking charges after large amounts of marijuana and controlled substances, which you had and others shipped through the U.S. Postal Service. All right, that's the past. That was a federal offense that could have landed you in prison for many years to come. Now, serving your time in Davies County Detention Center not now, but then you're good now. Davies County Detention Center in Owensboro. You faced troubles with drug addiction, depression, and jail time. How did you overcome the hardship to get straight?
There's multiple factors. I would say the main one, and I'm a firm believer in Christ and Jesus, that's it. I can't, whenever I take over and it's me in charge and I'm in the driver's seat, I'm the guy that's going to drive us right off the bridge. And I've known that, since my life has changed and I've surrendered my life, and I'll say this on any platform, wherever I go, it's plain, it's simple. It's simple to me. But other than that, I would say my wife and my kids. My wife and my kids have been truly, like I was telling John on the way here, my daughter saved my life. That day, October 25th, 2012, sitting in a jail cell on my daughter's first birthday, helped me to realize that the weight of my sins, and not only the weight of my sins, that my actions don't just affect me, that it affects everybody around me. And, that was a life-changing moment in that season.
Yeah. I wrote down Proverbs 15:10. Discipline is severe for one who leaves the way, and whoever can't stand correction will die. I read about that day of yours After the family visit was over, the coercive cocktail of worry and guilt was too much for you to bear. You began sobbing uncontrollably as he entered his jail cell. It was at that moment that Maddox had reached his lowest point in life, and at that very second, he realized he needed to summon up an inner strength that would far exceed any physical strength he could ever muster up in order to seek change. Was going to jail the best thing that could have ever happened to you?
Absolutely. It was a time where, I sat still, and I needed that time to sit still and to be off of those substances. Because, we're talking about also to addiction here. When it comes to being an addict, some people just can't comprehend of what it's like to be an addict. And the best analogy that I can give you to depict of what it's like being an addict is, you ever played that game in a swimming pool where you try to hold your head underwater so you can hold your head underwater the longest, right? You know that urgency of coming up for air, that feeling of what you need, that I have to have air, or literally I'm gonna die. I feel like I'm gonna die. That's what it's like being addicted to drugs. And, it took me going to jail to be away from all the madness and chaos, for that period of time in which there was still drugs in there. But I still had enough time I couldn't move, sit still. It says, be still to know that I am God. And that's what I kept playing over and over again in my head. And the scripture, Psalm 41, I would just remember writing the scripture, Psalm 41, over and over again. And it goes, I'm paraphrasing, which is, I know I shouldn't be paraphrasing scripture, but it says, I waited patiently for the Lord. I cried out to my God. I cried out to God. But basically the scripture's telling us that I was in a season where I begged God, I pleaded with God, and I waited patiently for him to respond. And he did respond. And he not only responded, but he took me out of the situation that I was in and put my foot up on a rock. And literally, the scripture says, put a new song in my mouth. And I could recall myself in the shower before going to work singing gospel songs and worship songs instead of the old filth that I was, practicing before. So the scripture was true, and it spoke to me. But yes, jail actually changed my life.
And your time in lockup got even worse when your wife and child came to visit you in Davies. Your youngest daughter, who had just had her first birthday, reached out to her father in the visiting room only to be separated by a thick partition glass wall which prevented you from any type of physical touching. That must have been devastating.
Yeah, it was during that like we talked about earlier, that was the pivotal moment for me. I told my wife, I said, I don't want you to bring her up here. I just remember as a kid being around other kids where, they would say, I'm going to go see my dad, go visit my dad, this weekend, and he's locked up in prison. And I remember as a kid thinking that I would never be one of those type of dads. Seeing what my mom went through, I said I would never put my spouse or put my kids through that ever. And, sitting in that visitation room, it was like a time lapse of everything that I went through as a kid and all the compromising that I've done leading up to, putting myself in a position where I became worse than my dad was, and that's when I heard that. And I'm not saying that I heard God audibly speak to me, but we sat down at this visitation table. There's a 2-inch thick piece of glass here dividing both of us. And there's a steel table, and my daughter's standing on the other side of the table, just, she's learning how to walk. So she's taking her steps, just doing what kids are, just being curious. And it was like a reaction. Like she just stopped what she was doing, turned around and looked at me dead in my eyes and tried to touch me through the glass. And it was like what I heard play in my head was, Daddy, why can't I touch you? And that just literally just broke me down. It broke me. It was a profound moment in my life. And I still tell her today, like, I love you. And I want you to know that you changed my life. You saved me. Apart from like God used you to save me, so, and I still remember what that feels like deep down inside. And I just want to touch on this real quick. Because we live in a culture where addiction is prevalent and it's at its all-time high, and people are dying by the masses in our nation. And I know that there's somebody on this podcast that is probably struggling right now with addiction and not knowing what to do, or they have a kid that is in this vicious cycle that they can't get out. But it's not that the person doesn't love you. It's because we are blinded, and it is a tactic used by the enemy. But a guy hit me with this one time. I had been working through at the Christ Center Recovery Program. First time holding a job for over a year ever in my life. At this time, I'm basically I work for a paint contractor. So I'm painting industrial and commercial buildings. Well, we're on our way. And I remember one of the things that I hated about the mornings was watching the sun rise up over the trees, because it reminded me of being out all night. And I hated that feeling of just being up, running around, being high, just, chasing the dragon, as we say. And the guy looked at me, and it's about 5:45, 6 a.m. And he looks at me and he says, "Hey, did you love your kids when you was out there?" And I thought, I looked at him, I said, "Yeah, I loved my kids," And he paused for a minute and just kept driving. We're in a little bitty S10, so we're closer than me and John is. And he said, "No, did you really love your kids?" And I said, "Yeah, I loved them. I love my kids more than anything." And he proceeded to ask me a couple more times, to where I'm getting frustrated at this point. It's early in the morning. We're about to go work in the hot sun all day. And I responded, I said, "Yes, I loved my kids so much." And he hit me with the punchline. He said, "If you loved your kids so much, then why didn't you just stop using drugs and do the right thing and be a man?" And when he said that, my response was anger. I got upset. But then I'm processing, and I'm thinking, how can I be upset when he's right? The fact that I loved the lifestyle, I loved the drugs, I loved the partying more than I loved my own flesh and blood. And I feel like that was one of the low blows that literally solidified who I was in Christ and who I was as a person, that I wasn't going back. I was done compromising. And the fact that I loved something over my own flesh and blood, something that was a gift to me, just kind of helped me change my whole perspective on life and to really want to change.
So if you were in that driver's seat of that car today, what would you tell a young man facing those same problems on how to survive it?
I would literally ask him the same set of questions, and I would tell him, I am you. I was that guy. And it's possible to change. It's possible to live your life to the fullest. Somebody asked me, I always tell them when someone says, "Hey, so what do you do for a living?" I'm like, I lift weights, but I don't know what I do. I don't know what I do. I don't know what I want to be when I get older, because, now the opportunities that I have are they're everywhere. And I just remember laying in that jail cell, and I said, "Lord, if you give me an opportunity, I will never pass the opportunity that you give me. I will take life on to the fullest. I will make sure that I leave this earth with the empty cup or a full cup, whichever one you want me to have. I'm going to do it just for you." And, I've been rolling ever since.
That's amazing. Because of what you were given, a choice between 2 5-year prison sentences or entering a recovery program, looking back, do you think the program was good, or would you, as let's say with your knowledge now, your wisdom, do that program differently? Meaning, did your own will help you recover, or did the system in place they put you in have a bigger impact on getting you healthy?
Well, let's just be real. My own will, my own accord, my own thought process landed me with 2 5-year prison sentences. It took me being in a structured environment. It took a man telling me, "You need to shut up and listen." That's what it took for me to fully grasp. And it wasn't that they would tell, like, that somebody told me literally to shut up and listen, but they taught me, to it's not always wise to talk all the time, and soak things up. And they didn't just tell me, they lived it out with their own life. The place is called Friends of Sinners. It's a Christ Center Recovery Program in Owensboro, Kentucky. Great program. It changed my life. I ended up spending 3 years. And the crazy thing is a lot of people would rather go to prison and do their time than to go to that facility, because it was so extensive. I mean, you're talking abstinence from sex. You're talking, getting up every morning, doing, 6 hours worth of classwork every day and doing a job. It was the totally opposite of what you think. It was literally, we called it spiritual boot camp. And that's what, the Lord used that place to build a soldier for Christ.
Mm-hmm. So John, you're heavy into discipline, obviously, with your program, your protocol at Energized Health, and discipline as well you can use to get to where you are in your level. Do you think this movement of jail reform and letting people out with no bail just to end up back in 10, sometimes 50 times is good for them or bad for them?
It's bad for them. I feel like, there needs to be more programs implemented in the prison system for, offenders. For example, the courts a lot of times reach out to me when they have troubled teens, and, whether just to talk to them, give them some wisdom, give them some encouragement. And I sat down recently about 8 months ago with a kid. He's 14 years old. And I said, where do you see yourself in the next, 5 to 10 years? And this 14-year-old kid told me dead, in jail, or in prison, one of them. And I said, but why? And the kid said, because my daddy did it. My brothers did it. So it's on me too. But his mindset was, I'm going to go to jail. And he told me this. He's like, if I go to jail, I'll get out anyway. So I feel like there needs to be programs that have to be mandated that you have to complete before you get out. Not just a SAP. I'm talking intense programs and programs that can help you, give you. It's different when you leave jail with a purpose. When you leave jail or prison with a purpose and you're ready to get back into the workforce, you got to understand a lot of these people, when they come out, they get out of jail, they're homeless. So 3 things that keep people in that vicious cycle is old people, old places, old things. When you don't have a structured environment to go home to, you're going back to those old people, old places, old things, in which continues to feed the cycle over and over again. So until we find or develop a program, which there are certain programs, but you're hearing them now to where they're taking the programs out of the prison system. But also too, there's a jail down in Florida where he's big on, hey, you do your time and your time should be hard. And I'm a firm believer in that too. There shouldn't be TVs. There shouldn't be basketball goals. There shouldn't be rec sports and I'm just a believer in that, because a lot of times, you would hear people coming to jail talking about it's easy because think about it. When you're in jail, there's no responsibility. You're fed, you get health whenever it's available. You do get health care. So to some, it's a piece of cake. It's, they come in and have a good time. It's a vacation away from, reality, while their kids are out there living on their own.
Better than life on the street, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So John, you deal with habits. Julius just listed the 3 habits that put you back on the street because they're used to it. That's what they know. Their parents probably taught them the habits, and they did the habits. When you're dealing with addiction, not only sugar, but I'm sure some hard drugs, people come in to change their life and transform for better. How do you relate that, what Julius just said, to the way you coach?
Well, first of all, I mean, Julius really, hit it on the head. Unless someone's committed to make a change, which obviously Julius had the commitment. He wanted to change. So he actually made a conscious decision. He could have taken this path or this path. He chose the more difficult path, of discipline, of change. He wasn't going to go back to the old ways. And by the way, when you choose this path, the same old path, you're screwed. So guess what? Learn the sign language, choose this path. This is a good path. It'll get you where you want to go. But even something as simple as, making a commitment, that's the number one decision to change your life. But we have many people that have come into our program, they're in another kind of prison. They're in a mental prison, where they don't even realize whether it's alcohol, drugs, pornography. Addiction is addiction. So there's no one that's worse or better than another one. Addiction is addiction. So I've had a lot of people, I'm talking high level, doctors, attorneys, high level CPAs, CEOs, they're drinking a fifth of alcohol every day. They're doing pornography every day. But what's amazing is when they make a decision, even if it's just for their health initially, the addiction goes away. Well, why? Because once you make a decision, you get moving in the right direction, you get momentum in the right direction. So you start moving away from one negative thing, just like what Julius did, all the negative things you automatically are moving away from. And that can be life-changing. Of number one is just make a right decision that you want to start moving in a positive direction in any one area, and it'll help you get away from all those other areas.
Nice. All right. I got time for just a couple more. So 6 Pro Open Raw Division competition held in Mountain View, California, when he pressed a mind-numbing 739.6 pounds, bettering the previous world record of 738.5 pounds, set in 2016 by Russia's Kirill Sarychev, an achievement many experts in the powerlifting world thought would last for decades to come. Like Rocky IV, basically, Kirill Sarychev from Russia in 2016 set a world record raw 3-lift powerlifting total of 2,386.5 pounds, which is 738.5 times 3. Did his record motivate you? Did you know anything about that?
No, actually, yeah. So it was a reaction. It discouraged me because I was en route. So I was en route. That's when I started to process. All right, we're going to go towards 700 pounds on a bench press, which was still unheard of. Well, this Russian came out of nowhere, and not literally out of nowhere, but he just pushed the envelope so far. So the record before him was 722. He pushed it from 722 to 738. That's a significant amount of weight, like as far as jumping wise. So when it came to me, my thoughts were, man, I don't know if I'll ever be able to catch this guy, especially if he, continues to compete. But I had an email from my coach, and he said, you will be the all-time world record holder in bench press. And it goes to show you, like, even though you don't think that you could do this, like, other people will believe it before you do. And he believed in me from day one, And so it's not 3 lifts, just not to make a correction. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So the 3 lifts would be squat, bench, deadlift. But he broke the 738. The information they had, it was kind of mixed up. He did it. It was a single lift. So he had an actual event put on in Russia where it was just him bench pressing, and that was it. So that's when he broke the 738. I came back, responded with 739. People discredited it because the actual guy that was helping spot the weight, there's 3 spotters. He jumped and cheered, bumped the weight. When I locked it out, I dropped it. Usually the lift is complete whenever you rack it. Well, I didn't have time to rack it because he bumped the weight. But Kirill actually got on because it was his federation that I did it in, and he said the lift was good. He said I locked it out anyway. So just to prove to the world and prove to everybody else, because I knew I was destined for this lift. I knew I was destined for greatness. 5 weeks later, I went and did it again, beat it by 5 pounds. 6 months later, I did it again and beat it by, I jumped up, 40 pounds, 38 pounds. And, and that's where the name comes from. The name is not about the name. Somebody's like, oh, because it's a regular bench press or because you're just, no, the name irregular is just about being different from the norm, being different from the world. I know where my power comes from. It comes from the man above. Without him, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And that's what makes me irregular. When the rest of the world will say, I did this, look what I did. And it's not what I did. It's all what Christ has done for me.
That's amazing. That really is. You weren't 40 yet, I don't think.
No, I'm 36.
36. And last I read, 440 pounds.
410, lost some weight.
410, good job. Okay, 6'3".
6'3", 6'4".
6'4", okay.
6'4".
Added an inch and lost some weight. Or my stats are bad.
It's all good.
Does height help out?
Yeah, I wouldn't say as much. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wouldn't say as much as weight does. Mass moves mass. So the bigger you are, the more, to an extent, the bigger you are, the more leverage you have for the bench press. Now, I hopped on John's protocol about 3 years ago, and I lost about 30 pounds and lost it too quick. And not that I felt great. I was still strong, but I lost it too fast. My body, it kicked my body into overdrive, and which is a great thing. When you're trying to lose weight, it's phenomenal, and you want to keep some strength, it's phenomenal. But me personally, I lost it. We wasn't expecting for me to lose that much weight. I want to say it was like 30 pounds in like 2 months.
Yep.
And that's a lot of weight to be dropping. So for my sport, I have to have a certain amount of muscle mass, a certain amount of weight for leverage in general. So, and that's just a plug-in because it worked. But
which is also a great segue, because didn't you have a phone call about your lift and weight and something that Julius?
Well, I'll share my part, and I'll let Julius share his part. So Julius been coaching me. I'm pretty much on the phone with him every week and getting my tips of what to do for that week, and how to lift percentage and what muscle groups to work. And so he's a great coach. But what Julius didn't know is I had just challenged my whole team at Energize Health as, hey, let's all hit our restart button. And I told him I'm going to lose 20 pounds myself, and I did not have 20 pounds to lose, really. And as Julius knows, he met me in person before. I didn't really have 20 pounds to lose, but I just kind of put that as a challenge out that if I could lose 20, I knew anybody, can get better. So I challenged my team across the nation, and whatever people were on there, a bunch. We got a big team. And so anyway, I didn't tell Julius that at the beginning. I didn't tell him I was doing that. So we're on our last call, and I said, anything else? And he goes, well, I'm assuming you've already been bulking up, and, so I want you to add a few more carbs. And I said, Julius, bulking up? I said, I lost 20 pounds. And the phone kind of went silent at that point. So I don't know what was going on in Julius's head. I'll let him respond to that, of what he was thinking.
Well, I had to replay it in my mind to make sure I heard what I said. What he said, and I said, "Wait, what?" He said, "Yeah, I lost 20 pounds," and sent me a screenshot of this progression of his weight loss that tracks his weight loss. And I said, I think my response was, "Bro, you cannot do that. Like, you cannot be in a calorie deficit and losing weight and trying to maintain strength. They don't go hand in hand. There's only a select few people that can do that, and it's because of genetics. Like, I'm worried now." And he's like, "Oh, it's fine." He's just energetic, enthusiastic about it. And I'm like, so I just go along with it. I'm like, if you're, please eat. That's what I just said. Please eat. Get you some protein, carb up. Just make sure you're eating and getting plenty of water. Did you complete your goal? Yeah. All right, let's add on a few pounds. He's like, "Oh, I've been eating." I'm like, "No, I need you to eat." So that's kind of how the conversation went. Kind of gave me a scare for a second, but we're going to be okay.
So this last phone call that I had with Julius, he's always checking up on me and, making sure I'm on track. And so every week he's giving me my, kind of my updates and my tips. Here's what I want you to work. Here's a percentage of weight I want you to lose. Or not weight to lose, weight losing off the lift. So interestingly, it was a little counterintuitive for me. It was a little awkward. Julius would be like, "No, I don't want you lifting out with that heavy of a weight, work with this weight." And so he really does have a methodology. And so I just totally submitted myself to his expertise. I take expert advice. So he'd tell me, "No, this week I want you just working out with this, work out with that." But we get on our last phone call, and Julius says to me, "Okay, John, the only other thing, we never really talked about food," and Julius didn't realize I just challenged my whole team. We're going to all hit our restart button on the Energize Health protocol. And so, of course, on the protocol, you're going to gain some lean muscle, you're going to gain your hydration, but you're also going to lose subcutaneous and visceral fat. And I told my team, based on everything, and I kind of was always in the maintenance phase for 27 years. And, I ran a pretty healthy 15 to 17% body fat, which is very healthy. And lean, it's all green on the scales and all that. But I thought, well, if I really do this, I'm probably going to lose 20 pounds if I really hit the button hard. So I hit it and very disciplined. I'm doing all this training, and I did. I dropped 20 pounds. I dropped 20 pounds of fat. My hydration went up, which I was already at 60. I went to 62%. So I'm feeling good. But when I mentioned to Julius, I lost 20 pounds, I kind of got a little bit of a dead air. You know, in the radio business, they call it dead air. It was dead air. And then when he finally spoke, he basically said something along the effect, and I'll let him speak to this in a minute, but he basically said something along the effect of, John, that's not our world. You know, in the high lift, heavyweight like this world, he said, you want to be gaining mass. You know, you want to be gaining mass. You cannot be losing weight and lift 555 pounds. You can't do that in our world, John. It works the other way.
Yeah, so I was kind of shocked when he said that, because typically, you know, when you're gaining weight and you're trying to get stronger, you want to be in a caloric surplus. Like, so you want to be eating, if you're going to be eating clean foods, it needs to be, you know, just almost doubled what you're used to taking in. And, you know, which most people, they kind of eat dirty and clean. But when he told me that, it just kind of shocked me. I didn't know how to respond, because I'm like, why my first question was why, but why would you do this? And again, this goes into, you know, him not being familiar with my world, just like when he brings me into his world, I'm not familiar with that, you know, so I had to break it down to him and explain. But at the end of the day, he said, I remember he said, you know what, Julius, he said, I got this. He's like, I got this. This is something that I want. And he said, I know God wants this. Some along the lines like that. And I said, all right, well, I'm here to support you. I'm here to aid you. So whatever I got to do to help, let's do it. But I said, one thing is, you need to eat. You got your goal. Let's get some food in you, you know? So, yeah, it scared me. It was,
Don is definitely irregular.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, definitely. I'll tell you this, that, you know, this really was never a human goal. It was never a goal of mine to lift heavy or lift a lot of weight. It's really the fruit of faithfulness. And interestingly, and Steve, I love to share this with you because, you know, I teach real science, and I teach people to speak to their cells on the Energized Health Protocol. You know, and you guys can, you know, go look all this up. It's scientific. You know, when you speak to a cell positive, your cell hears you and it responds. So there's all kinds of scientific studies done where when you speak positive to a cell and fast freeze it, it looks like a beautiful snowflake or some beautiful artistic. You speak negative to a cell and it looks like a horrible black thorn bush, and your cells respond to the words they hear. And for 27 years, I just got a tiny bit stronger because every day during my workout, I speak to my cells and I say, the Lord is my strength. 100 times a day, every single workout, the Lord is my strength. And if I lift this weight at 555 pounds, which has never been done on a decline hammer strength machine in the world, 555 pounds is the only free weight machine, no one will be able to dispute scientifically, speaking to cells, the Lord is my strength, that works. And so that's why when I shared with Julius, no, Julius, I believe God wants me to do it. Why? Because it proves a truth. Even the word science defined is the search for the truth that is known. And I believe it's a scientific truth that not only when you speak to a cell, but when you speak to a cell that the Lord is your strength, that it's not about me, not about my strength. No, I'm saying the Lord is my strength. And if you see me, I'm a little guy, especially if you see me with Julius. I'm a real little guy. You know, and I'm probably about $179, by the way. I'm probably about 179 pounds. I got a 30-inch waist, you know. That's a little guy to be pushing 555 pounds. A triple, 3 point something my body weight for a 179-pound guy to be lifting 555. So I do believe I'm doing this to the glory of God, and it will prove a scientific, indisputable, undeniable fact.
All right. Well, last question then. I mentioned it. You're not yet 40. Your goal was to get up to 800 pounds on the bench. You did it.
Not yet.
Well, you're going to do it.
I'm going to do it.
You're going to do it. You have 4 beautiful kids, a beautiful wife. So what is next for Julius Maddox? What are your new goals once you hit the 800?
I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. My ultimate goal is helping people. I have many different things that I want to do, but I do want to lose. I'm going to lose around 130 pounds and record the whole process. I want to get well below 300 pounds eventually, and this is long term. But I haven't got away from, what's gotten me to where I'm at today, and that's going to schools, encouraging kids, speaking, going to prisons, coaching, and helping people, find the best versions of themselves. I think that's what I was created for. Before powerlifter, obviously, I'm a son of God, but I've been put on this earth to inspire and help the world to achieve their dreams, whatever that is, in a positive fashion.
God bless. That is amazing. Well, Julius and John, we are out of time. Unfortunately, I could keep talking to you guys for another hour. Please tell our listeners where they can go to find out more about you, maybe follow your weight loss program online if you have a channel, anything you want them to know about social media.
Yeah, so for the link for Energized Health will be under we'll give you the link to that. But my other platforms are Irregular Strength, and that's IRREGULAR Strength. And you can that's on all TikTok, Instagram. I have a YouTube channel. Irregular Strength. I'll give you all the handles though also.
Okay, they'll be in show notes. John, anything?
I'm just super excited, and I will say, Julius is a stronger man of God than he is on that bench press. And he's the strongest guy in the world. Got a beautiful heart, and I would encourage anyone that's listening, if you've got kids, high school, any of those platforms, as you can tell, he's an extraordinary speaker, totally inspirational. You can't imagine until really you meet him in person. So I'm sure he comes across great on this platform, but I'm just telling you, you meet this guy in person, he's life-changing, he's inspirational, and I'm just honored to be on the journey with him.
All right, and thanks again for sharing that journey with us on the Mill Creek View podcast.